Hello and welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark, the CEO of Leadershipity, a serial entrepreneur, a Bloom growth coach, wrote a book called Leading Winning Teams, and of course, the podcast Winners Find a Way. Most people know me probably because I spent over 12 seasons and 3 World Series in professional baseball. And today on the Winners Find a Way show, I got a special Winning Ways episode with my man, Mickie Kennedy. Mickie, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, thanks.
Man, excited to have eReleases president, Mickie Kennedy, over from Baltimore, Maryland today. And Mickey's a fellow EO brother, Entrepreneurs Organization guy, built his company back in 98, man. You got a 24-year-old company? No, 28-year-old company.
Yeah, it's been around.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And, we're talking about, when we talk about eReleases, Mickey's a press release expert. He is a dedicated craftsman to writing, to being in this. He's a poet, which I love. And you have been in this game a long time, man. And there's got to be a lot of changes in the PR game from 1998 till now. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And now, 99, we didn't have the whole social media thing, right? And now we're in the middle of social media hell, in my opinion. It's like way too much information. It's just data all the time. And everybody, hey, look at me. And the reality is we used to want, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, I was owning 1-800 Got Junk at the time. We wanted those press releases to get in the Arizona Journal, all the newspapers, everything. There wasn't a, hey, we just almost flipped over a truck and caught it on video and got 1 million views on YouTube, right? Like that was not a scenario. And so, like, walk me through about how small and mid-market, mid-sized businesses are really dialing this up.
So I think that the ones that are really killing it are the ones that are telling stories, using story arcs, sometimes putting the spotlight on interesting clients they serve, talking about their story, how they founded it. If you look at like people who appear on Shark Tank, they don't open with, "Hey, I'm an MBA. These are my numbers." They always share some vulnerability, something that gets you involved, a human interest element. I was laid off, or my dad died, and I remembered we used to have this dream, or we had this hobby, and I thought maybe I could turn it into a business. And all of those things are magic when it comes to the media. Journalists love to cover stories. I remember, during the .com era, everybody would continually talk about the person who created eBay as a technical guy, engineer, and I think his girlfriend at the time was trying to sell her Pez collection. And he goes, "I think I can do this online and make optimum money. I'll create a little website for you." And eBay grew out of that. And I think the reason that story got circulated so much was because it was an easy way to understand someone, and also gives you an idea of who this person is. Like, oh yeah, rather than a yard sale, we're gonna create a whole new platform for you to sell your Pez collection. And so I think that the businesses that do really well are those that are just continually trying different things, and they're not looking at what other people in the industry are sending out, because most press releases out there do not generate earned media. And earned media is what I call it, and what the industry calls it, when you get journalists writing articles about you based on your company, your content that you're releasing. They are authoring the article. And this is muddled in the industry because there are a lot of players out there with wire in their names that don't have journalists in the equation. They don't send a journalist. They take the press release and they syndicate it across a few websites. But generally, the locations on these websites aren't great. They're usually subdomains and things like that. And I see that as a distraction. And the real goal is to have something meaningful that will, then go to journalists who are reviewing for stories and hopefully transforming that press release into an article.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because We're going to talk a little bit about that point in a minute, about how much noise and, again, filtering to the wrong places, and probably what would we describe the efficacy of most press releases? Are we talking about 3-4%? Because I was in the supplement world, right, of sport, and I remember, like, listen, the efficacy was like, no, it was like 92% poor, right? It was like half the thing, because the FDA was not governing supplements. So you could say anything on the label. You did have to have the ingredients in there, but hey, your hair is going to grow back. You're going to get 6 inches taller. You're going to run faster. Like, you name it. They could say anything. Did not have to prove it, right? It was like, man, I got to get this supplement. I'm going to run faster. Like,
Sure.
come on, man. Like, and so we found the efficacy in PR and press releases and writing is nearly as poor. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that it's around 3% of press releases get turned into earned media, and so there's the failure rate is really high. But that being
Yeah.
said, if you look at the 3% that are getting picked up, there's a lot of patterns there, and I'm all about educating people as to what those patterns are and what you could do to be meaningful. So many people approach PR in a way that's greedy. It's like, hey, I have this new product or service and I just want to promote it. And I'm like, that's great. But if you are a journalist and here you have a product and a list of features, there's not a lot there for me to build a story and a story arc. And one of the easiest ways to take a product or service launch is to incorporate a case study. Maybe point out a publicly available data point, like 67% of new businesses in your industry fail in the first 5 years. And here was a company 2 years old, still losing money, and they used our logistics software invoicing solution. And at the end of a 6-month trial, they're projected to have their first net profit this year. And that is a huge outcome and a huge win. And by you putting the spotlight on this customer, it shows the value of your software. And a journalist is much more likely to then write an article. At the end of the day, the journalist, their customer is the reader or the person viewing their content. And a story that has more drama, like here is a casualty of it looks like it's gonna be another casualty in the industry and it's been turned around. Those transformative moments are things that they know their audience are going to want to know about. And so I always tell people that sometimes what you want to promote has to be the pill that you are going to find some cheese to put around it so that then the media will be more attracted to it. And so sometimes that does require reverse engineering. Sometimes it requires approaching PR, looking at more strategic types of releases that you send out rather than just the average release that you see other people do.
Yeah, I love that little reference. This is a common deal with my dog, right? We're doing the meds with all some food, and that dog's always figuring it out. Like, oh, when I get cheese, there's something in it, right? Finally figures out that he gets it. Let's talk about today on the Winners Find a Way show. I am with Mickie Kennedy, president of eReleases. He's an East North Carolina native, and also an East Carolina Pirate grad. Nice. And then you did something similar to me. We followed a similar pattern to college, where you go on and do a master's with a graduate assistant program. I was actually a coach at Michigan State, and so I had to teach classes and coach athletes. That's what I had to do for my GA. And I think I made 18 grand a year, and they paid my tuition, right? It was like, and it was only 15-hour days, so not bad. It was great money. I was probably averaging about $1.25 an hour, right? And you did something similar. You're a graduate in fine arts and creative writing there, and waiting tables. And where did you expect to go from there?
I expected I would wait tables full time and just write poetry and maybe fiction and just live a little bohemian life. And I had always waited tables through college and graduate school. But once I started working full time, which is never 40 hours in the serving industry, it's like 50, 60 hours. I realized being on my feet, my back ached, my joints ached. I just didn't love it. And so I decided I needed more more of a schedule. And so I transitioned to a safe office job. Got hired as a number 3 at a telecom research startup. And because I had writing in my background, I inherited the fax machine and a Rolodex and told to send out press releases. And so I did that as well as a million other things there. And I really was disappointed when I sent out a press release and nothing happened, especially because, navigating a fax machine is a full day job with 150 numbers, and the fax machine only held 100 numbers. And so I was constantly plugging numbers in and hitting send and waiting for the screech to end. And I looked at articles and realized that the story arc is the most basic form of article that journalists write. And what we were sending out was great, that it had data, but there was no story there. And so I had to get in and sort of tell some of the stories around our data. And I remember the first press release we did around that was talking about one country having in the Caribbean having more telecom traffic to and from the US than all the others combined. And it turns out that that was the call center for 1-900 numbers at the time, which were popular for landlines. And we wrote about that and sent it out. And we got picked up by The Economist, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, many trade publications. And I just realized, I think I'm figuring this out. And it was just a matter of getting that story and telling an interesting story and having some data points behind it. But at the end of the day, journalists aren't going to hunt for the story behind the data. You've got to sort of bring that to the table to them, and then they'll certainly engage with it and run with it.
Yeah, I love that, and what a big win, right? Like to get featured in that and realize, and I think all of us want to contribute right where we're sitting, right? In any organization, I'm being compensated for my role here, and so you're trying to land some wins here. What a big win! First, the other thing that I love about you, and before I say that, tell them where they can find you real quick for people who want to get to you and learn about eReleases. We're gonna pass on a free masterclass to you here on the show. Here, I'll show you that in just a minute. But if people just want to get in touch with you, Mickie, and learn more, how do they do that?
So the website is eReleases.com. All of our social media is on the lower right, I think. And I do have that free masterclass that was mentioned. It teaches the strategy of the types of releases that you should be doing. These are all releases that are within the 3% that are getting picked up, and they apply for most businesses. And that's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. And again, it's completely free, and it's less than an hour long. It's easy to digest. And, I always tell people, never judge PR with doing one press release. And, you should do a PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases and then judge based on that what worked. And you're going to want to choose a variety of releases. And if you follow these strategic types of releases, I've never had anybody not generate earned media by doing a campaign around those.
Okay. You're also an author, the PR Strategy Manifesto, and a beginner's guide to press release writing. Awesome. Now, what most people don't know about you is you returned to your master's level work recently. In fact, just a bit ago. I mean, it's April now, and you released in March your full standing poetry book, Worth Burning.
Yeah, it's a book about me and my life and growing up in the South, and it's a very meaningful book to me, and it's something that I came to again later in life, realizing that I can fit in creative writing again and run a business. And so I'm very honored to get that out. And anybody interested, you can find it on Amazon, Worth Burning, or visit worthburning.com.
Love it. How'd you come up with that title, Worth Burning?
So I am a big domain name guy, and I years ago came across worthburning.com, and I picked it up and I said, one day I'm going to write a book, and that's going to be the title of it. And I had written the book, and someone said, well, there needs to be a poem in there called Worth Burning. And I was like, okay, I'll write it. And they're like, I've never seen anybody write a title poem that's pretty good with that assignment. But I did, and it turned out really well. And
Mm,
Down south, we have burn barrels, and all the neighbors, everybody burns their trash because
yeah.
to take it to the landfill, it's $3 a bag. And so it's sort of the experience of me and my mom burning stuff out back and just family life there.
Yeah, it's a good insight, right? Like I was just talking about this because I was in Ireland with the EO board and the Global Leadership Conference, which I know you've attended a number of times as a communication chair for EO Baltimore. An incredible chapter, by the way. Cool, really cool EO house they have in Baltimore, right there on the what do you call it? You guys
The
call it the
harbor,
bay. What
we
do you
call it
call
the
it? The
Baltimore
harbor. The
Harbor. Yeah.
harbor. Yeah, thank you. So on the harbor, it's gorgeous and good spot to get something done and get some work done for sure. And man, I think about like we were just tied up with the Ireland culture. And when I got back, I flew to Phoenix across the country and drove across the country with my son coming back from college. And you drive and it's like, man, Arizona's got its own culture. New Mexico's got its culture. Texas has its culture. Oklahoma's a little different. And then you just keep going. It's like almost every state lends itself to these different things. And you talk about North Carolina. People in the Midwest don't think about burning their trash. Like this is a different deal. New York, the coast, they talk about barges and putting trash barges, right? Which
Right.
which we all got educated from Stuart Little. Like, like this is how it happens. And so it's funny that these cultural things that happen that's part of our lives growing up, not everybody always understands. And so it's a cool little bit. So I love that. I want to pivot a little bit to the efficacy of information and all that you've done because you've done this audit of PR forever, right? And you've really dialed up why the 3% works. And here's a challenge in today's environment of AI, right? Because AI is going to go, oh, let me go through all the press releases and I'll tell you what you need. And then you find out AI is going through the 97% crap and they're giving you the best of the crap. Like, I don't know, but it's not a good, relevant way. And so here's the challenge. I was also in one of those businesses, right, Mickie, of professional baseball, right, where 30% success rate and you're a hero, you make 10 million, right? Like,
Yeah.
and like you fail a lot, right? And so it's like, well, if you were going to tell anybody any hitting instructions and you took the 100% of all of it, it turns out that there's a bunch of very false fractional percentage that actually works, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see on YouTube the craziest crap ever that people are trying to teach people to hit, right? It's like crazy. So you've done this audit. Walk through all the folks that are going, hey, man, I just hit Claude or Chat GPT and wrote up a press release. I can't believe, Newsweek and, Time Magazine's not calling. Walk us through that.
So I tell people that AI is a terrible place to uh, let choose what to write about your company or business. I always say go to AI with what you have in mind that is strategic and have AI write for you. And my approach is if you tell it to write a 600-word press release, it'll spit it out in a couple of seconds. And it'll be an okay reading press release, but it could be a lot better. And so I always go to AI and say, hey, I want you to write a press release about my business, and here's what I want it to be about. This is the subject matter. And try to incorporate a data point and give me the reference of that data point because I'm going to have to go out and verify it because you lie. And say, now give me the structure of this press release. 80% of the time it spits out the whole press release. I just ignore it and say, okay, that was great. Now give me a structure or outline of this press release. And then it gives it to me. And I say, okay, now give me 10 headline options for this press release. And if I'm happy with one of those, I pick it. If not, I'll say, I like this one the best, but I also would like this element to be in the headline. And
Yeah.
once I'm happy with that, I go, write me 3 opening paragraphs. And if it's missing something, I'll go back and say, I like this one, but incorporate this. And then I just take it, paragraph by paragraph, second or third paragraph, I might say, include a company quote here and make it an amazing quote. Make it something that will stand out and has active verbs. And if a journalist was to paraphrase what I said, there would be an ache or a loss for what was previously there. And AI will get it. AI will say, well, that sentence really matters. And if they don't, you go in there and you play with that and say, give me 10 different quote options, quotes that I can have. And because a quote is your back door, your Trojan horse to saving you to be in an article. I've had clients issue a press release on a subject matter, and the next day or two, a newspaper writes about that article, and it's very obvious that it was influenced by that press release, but that company was never mentioned because sometimes it's not deliberate. It's the managing editor looks at it and says, why you've got this safe quote by a tiny company I've never heard of, and he just scratches it out and says, remove this, but otherwise it's a great article. And they don't know that you inspired it, and you just get sort of lost. But if you have an amazing quote, that managing editor will see that and say, I don't know who this is, but wow, that's an amazing quote. And maybe even put a check mark beside it. Good job. And so that's one of the ways to ensure that you don't lose yourself in a story that can be, where you could be potentially erased. And if a journalist is looking at two story ideas, two press releases that are similar newsworthiness, and one has an amazing quote, they know that when they finish the article and they either put the safe quote that this company had or the amazing quote that you had, it's going to smack harder having your quote in there because it's going to make the article just seem so much better. And so it's really, like I said, the Trojan horse to ensuring that you get pickup. And yet I think quotes are some of the most abused items in PR, where it looks like it was written by committee. Often it doesn't read any differently tone wise or anything than the rest of the press release. And so it's easy for a journalist to paraphrase what you said and not attribute it to you at all if they choose to write about you.
Yeah, that's so good. And those are tons of great prompts right there that Mickey's telling you, and I think we're all trying to hit the easy button, which I appreciate. I really honor that we're limited on time. We're trying to do a good job. Sometimes it's better than anything we can write, which I appreciate for someone who feels like, hey, that's not my gift, and I don't know how to say this well. There are a lot better ways, but what he just walked you through was a pretty good way to do that. So you're definitely wanting, this is just a little bit of insight here on the masterclass that you can, get involved here. So check that out at eReleases.com/plan, eReleases.com/plan. And then, one of the things that I talk about, what makes a release newsworthy? I mean, you hit some key highlights like, title. You're talking about grab and catch. Great quote, because I do like a great quote, by the way. I'm always looking for it and it'll grab me, right? The clickbait crap gets me right now. They figured that out because they were like, oh my gosh, Lincoln's quote, and they only give you half the quote, so you got to click the link and get the rest. And I'm like, man, that clickbait stuff's just working, right?
Right.
So as you're sitting in there, what really is making this thing? Those are all nice things to have, and they're selling papers and they want eyeballs. That's great, but it's got to be newsworthy still. What makes it newsworthy?
I think that what makes it newsworthy is it's what makes it irresistible to the audience. What is the audience going to want to consume? Sometimes it's education, like, you're learning something. Sometimes it's entertainment. The best stuff has a blend of both. Like I mentioned, the founder's story, the eBay, and what gave them the impetus for it. Incorporating that into your boilerplate. That's usually a section in the press release at the bottom where it's about company, about Microsoft, and then it talks about, it's one paragraph that just sort of sums up what Microsoft is. And just putting those little elements, irresistible stories, into your boilerplate is a great way to sort of add to your press release. You certainly can lead with that for the initial release, but later find a way to just incorporate it into your story and have it there as added attraction. And also, what's compelling in what you're releasing. I mentioned that I work for a telecom research company. It was great because we had data, but even then, the media wanted to know what the story was around the data. And one of the ways that I find my clients always get pickup is to do an industry survey. Survey your industry, take their temperature on something right now that you can take things that are hot, like AI. If you're in the graphic design industry, you did a survey of graphic designers, and 62% felt that AI is going to replace them in 5 years. And then build out a press release around that result. And you can be the logical person with an amazing quote saying, I don't believe that AI is going to replace graphic designers, but I think that graphic designers who don't step up their game and learn how to use AI, as well as bridge the gap for people, are going to be at a huge disadvantage in the coming years. And things like that. And you don't need a Rolodex like I had at the telecom company for data. You can just go out to a small or independent trade association and stay away from the big ones. The ones that have the conferences, they don't need you. They have their own PR team. They're not going to want to work with you. But what you don't realize is there's hundreds, if not thousands, of other trade associations in your industry that are really small. Like in mine, there's PRSA, everyone knows that's the big one, but there's one that represents PR firms of 50 employees or less, and that's probably 80-90% of the industry, and they're not well known. And if you approach them and say, hey, here's a link, Survey Monkey, a survey I would love to mention you in a press release I'll be issuing over PR Newswire the next couple of weeks. And about 2/3 of the time, they say yes, and they'll send it to their members. And then you get the results and you figure out what were the big aha moments in the survey. Brainstorm cool stuff. Like if you're going to a trade show or conference, what would you ask other people that's going on right now? Because sometimes there are things trending that you're seeing and you wonder if other people are experiencing it. And so that could be a question or two in there, as well as other hot topics that are going on in your industry. And, by authoring that survey, you will stand out. On average, any of my clients who do this get between 6 to 14 articles about them, usually in industry trade publications, sometimes national newspapers. It's a great way to stand out. And by you being the author of the survey, you are now seen as a thought leader in your industry, and it's very easily done.
I love this. Because it is getting micro. We are getting targeted to where we really want to be. And we have what we call in EO, we have a My EO section, right? My EO anything, snowboarding and skiing, My EO golfing, My EO, I mean, you name it, like authors, all sorts of stuff. And so we are really getting into our micro audiences and our tribes, right? And we're really becoming, because there's something for everybody and it's out there. And I think your point is so well taken that where do you really want to distribute this information is really a big deal too. And I can recall clients of mine who got great press in areas that they really didn't benefit from. I had a client way back when who was selling products into women from 40 to 60 years old, but he loved cars, and so he was advertising in Car and Driver. I'm like, hey man, it has like a 1.1% female read in this magazine, right? Like this is like we're just taking cash and burning it out back every month, right? And he had a lot of cash, so it wasn't probably a big deal to him because he really wanted to show his friends. I don't know if you saw my ad in Car and Driver. So I get it, but man, to be pointed is a big deal. Walk us through a little bit of, really understanding, the distribution and you kind of touched on a couple things here, but how that really works. Like, I think people aren't exactly focused in the right area, or they don't have the right idea in mind, as you said. Like, is it going to be actually that important to try to go up against and try to get stuff in Time Magazine or Sports Illustrated or some national thing? And quite frankly, I don't know what the readership rate of those big nationals are anymore. Like
Yeah.
I wonder, they do still have obvious subscription rates,
Right.
but the readership level, I don't know anymore, because we're so micro, and we really want to spend time in our tribe, in our area that we want to spend time in. So, one of the things I think that you just mentioned about this, and I want to talk about how this relates to the distribution, is the best companies put their ego aside and give the people what they want, right? Like, what do the people really want? Your clients, you guys have a mission at eRelease, which I'd like to hear about. And the value is that they get earned media in areas that actually serve their small to mid-sized business of potential clients that are going to call them, and they're going to get eyes on them and learn about them that maybe they never even knew they existed. And so this is a whole nother option, and they provide that into all new networks to learn more about their business and what they do, or their service, and how they provide that. So walk me through that real quick a little bit. I kind of jumped around a little bit, but really about the distribution and how that gets in alignment.
Right. So there are wires that issue press releases. Basically it's a duopoly in the US. It's Business Wire and PR Newswire. Being a duopoly, they're expensive. So the partner that we have is PR Newswire. We approached them years ago and said, "Hey, you don't want our customers. They spend, like maybe $1,200 a year, and their salespeople are out, trying to land clients. They're spending 70 to 150,000 a year buying multimedia newsrooms and stuff." And so I said, but I also represent thousands of these people. So they gave me a really good rate. And so all of our releases at eReleases go out to your trades and your industries, but they also go out to national media. And with PR Newswire, it's close to $1,800 right now to do a 600-word press release nationally, and through us, it's about a quarter of the price. So it's a huge savings from that standpoint. There are, if you do a search, 100 other companies in PR, and some with wire in their name, but really it's PR Newswire and Business Wire. All these others are largely in the syndication game, which I had mentioned before. It gets you on websites no one's looking at, and sections of websites no one's looking at, and it's all duplicate content, and there's never the opportunity for earned media. You'll never get an article written about you. It'll be your press release replicated. When it goes out through PR Newswire or Business Wire, and you don't need to go to both, you just have to pick one. Journalists check both. There used to be a third wire, and they pivoted because journalists are now expected to do more and they're paid less because journalism isn't winning the way it used to years ago. And so they are busy, and they are predominantly looking on Business Wire and PR Newswire exclusively. Their inbox, if they're national media, is chaos. Over the last 20 years, media databases have become very prevalent, and they're widely abused. If you're a golf club company and you spent $15,000 for access to a media database for 1 year, and you blasted 3,000 golf people and they weren't interested, now you sort of talk yourself into now sending it to bankers and financial analysts and reporters who cover the financial world. And the idea is they play golf in that world, but they don't report on it. And a financial analyst is never going to say, "Wow, let me write an article about these golf clubs." But that happens across every industry, and their inbox is so bad that the wire is never been more important. When a journalist goes into the wire, logs in, it is a feed that is specific to their industry, and they can even customize it by saying, exclude these keywords. I cover fashion, but maybe I don't cover high fashion. So if it mentions these keywords, I don't want to see it. Or, I want to make sure that you pin certain articles that have a keyword that's very relevant to me. And so it makes a busy journalist's job so much easier to rely on the wire. And that's why it's so important to be part of it. There's other wires that you've heard of, like AP, Associated Press, UPI, United Press International, Reuters. They do not distribute press releases. They distribute articles that their staff wrote. and they license those articles usually to newspapers and websites. So Baltimore Sun, there's a big Supreme Court ruling at 5:30, and rather than an editor have to miss dinner and work on that article for the next 5 hours, can just pull the AP story and put it in the newspaper for the next day. And so that's very commonplace. But the AP, the UPI, Reuters do look at the stories on PR Newswire and Business Wire. They do often write articles based off of press releases themselves. So getting a press release out there is really important. And if it's not with Business Wire or PR Newswire, it really didn't see a lot of journalists or any journalists at all.
Nice. Mickie Kennedy here with eReleases president. You can see below, you can go to eReleases.com /plan, right? And that's going to be a free masterclass on strategic press release education. And you're going to want this. Today, we've talked about your story arc. How do you get this right? This is going to be a big deal because stories sell, not data and facts. And so, headline, super important what you choose. Mickie did a walkthrough of how to prompt AI and get you help there, but it's still work that you're going to have to produce. A key quote inside that, so important. And then, of course, the compelling evidence of story of something interesting, industry, and it may be not only your organization and something special you're doing, but the partnership you're forming that may be bigger, that people want to see that have intricate value to a local company or something in that side. Then, of course, getting your distribution that really works. That's a big deal, and I love the idea of asking, doing that survey to your clients. What do people want? What is the industry looking for right now? What's relevant right now? What do people want to hear more on? And I think that is a big deal. And that really creates credible angles, right, for what we're trying to do. So, we talked a little bit about earned media, which is what you're going to get through a good press release. They're going to pick up your story, earned media, and talk about that. And I think back to positioning yourself into the industry and where your clients are and what's going to be most relevant as opposed to anywhere is also strategic that you talk about in your masterclass, which I love. And so, man, Mickie, we covered a lot of ground here on Winners Find a Way and the winning ways of press release, because I think this is something when you have an expert that comes on and talks about how to do it when 97% are getting it wrong. Like, what does that 3% correct look like? Getting these reps. Again, it's prep and reps. Confidence comes from preparing yourself, getting it right, going through the trials, and you got to get those hours in. Don't expect to write your first release and be like, oh yeah, everyone's going to pick this up. Like, you're going to get it right. You're going to practice. Obviously, Mickie spent the time and got it. And of course, if you just want to, hit the easy button, you just call Mickie Kennedy at eReleases and get it done. Like that's the easy button, right, Mick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, for everybody, thank you for joining us. From live here, Mickie Kennedy from Baltimore, and I appreciate that. And as we talk about the press release game and getting information in earned media in a saturated world of noise, I think is a big deal, especially from a credibility indicator for you and your company and what you're doing. He's got a couple of great books out. Pick up his new book on poetry, Worth Burning. Exciting times. Grad school only took you like about 40 years to get that 30 years to get that released after grad school.
Yeah.
So I love that, using that grad school work and putting it to paper. So that's super fun. And congratulations on that. For everybody else, thank you for joining us on Winners Find a Way show. We are on every Thursday live, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. And then our podcast drops on Friday morning. And you can find that on all the major networks. And check out Mickie and his stuff. Check out eReleases.com. Get that masterclass, less than an hour, and you're going to learn a ton. Just like you learn in this show in such a short time, you're going to get a ton of data and information in 1 hour. And then, of course, you need more help, reach out to eReleases.com. If you'd like to see me and meet with me, please do that. You can go to my Calendly, 15 minutes, and I'll send you a free copy of our playbook for growth, which is Flourish. That book is getting all sorts of headlines there, and you can check out on my calendar. I'd love to help you get unstuck in your business as you desire for growth and keep driving for freedom and sustainability in your businesses. So we will do that. Mickie Kennedy, everybody. Thank you for joining us, Mickie.
Oh, thanks for having me.
For everybody else, we'll see you next time as winners find a way.